Hey, it's Ellie Mae with Swift Creek Customs, and I tackled a big project this past week with the Siser Romeo cutting machine. I set it up with a roll of vinyl, and this worked really slick. I didn't have any problems with the feed, but I do recommend having a fully supported in the front and the back when you are cutting with the large Siser Romeo machine. He is fast. The entire cut of this 21.5-inch decal, very detailed decal. It took 40 minutes for Siser Romeo to finish that cut and did great. Test cuts are your best friend with the Siser cutting machines. You can see I did a test cut there. I do have to say my test cut worked. The first time I cut the decal, I didn't quite have the settings right, so I ended up cutting it a second time, and boy, was it worth it. Rather than fighting the weeding of the design, I was able to weed this so smoothly. Now, it did take me a total of 2 hours and 20 minutes to weed just the black part. In the description on this video below, I have some tips on weeding, as well as I did full videos of the time lapse that it took. I have a long and a short video on the whole entire weeding process, but I just pulled out a few different pieces here to share of that weeding process. I used several different tools, and it really just depends on your personality and if you like weeding. A big part of the weeding process is the cut quality. If you have a really good cut, which I did, I had a great cut with this Siser Romeo cutting machine, and it weeded so nicely. It helps to have great tools as well, which is, I also have a link in the description below for additional information on that and the tools that I used, so you can check that out down there. But I wanted to show kind of the full process of this entire project. I was invested in it with several hours just alone in the weeding, but from the cut time to the weeding time and then on to the application, which we'll see here in a little bit. But I'm thrilled with this project. I picked a very detailed design on purpose. This is a 21.5-inch decal that is a mandala design, and I would not cut this much smaller. It has some very intricate pieces, very small circles and dots. It was not difficult to weed. It just took a lot of time here. But the biggest factor was my cut settings were perfect. So that helped a lot. And then it's just a matter of patience. Taking the time, good lighting helps. You'll see in this video that I'm using this magnifying weeding light, which I'll also link in the description below. And I'll put some links up to the Siser cutting machines. It worked really slick. So you can see here I pulled that magnifying glass out. My eyes are not what they used to be, but these pieces are really small. Some of them very tiny. So it helped greatly in those areas when I had some detail. And as you can see, this has a variety of details in the decal. So I just continued to go around the entire decal, moving it around as best I could, and weeding. Now you'll notice I changed clothes. I didn't do the entire thing in one sitting for the full 2 hours and 20 minutes. My family needed dinner, so I had to leave the first night and go do some other things, which is, as long as you keep your decals safe from little people or animals or anything else that might interfere, it works just fine. You can come back to it and give yourself a break from bending over, or your eyes a break from those tiny pieces. And then the hardest part at the very end is that trying not to mess up right at the very end. And after that was done, I still had the small piece of the letters. Now you see me cut around my decal here. I do this for a couple of reasons. It was easier to weed in the smaller portions, but also I save those pieces of vinyl and I will use them for future projects. It's just what I do. You can use a lot of those little pieces for all kinds of future projects. and I really wish I could move at this pace and not make mistakes, but this video I recorded it in 4 times on time lapse, and then this is also sped up another double, so quite a bit of speed up in the video process to be able to show you the whole thing and keep your attention. Make sure to get all those little tiny pieces in the middle, and then we're going to move on to the application part. So I have these wood sign blanks I picked up at Hobby Lobby. The biggest thing here with these blanks is that they have some sort of white coating on them, powder coating, and so your vinyl doesn't always stick. So I wiped them off with a baby wipe. Sometimes you also have to put like a coat of Mod Podge on top of it or paint it itself so that the vinyl would stick. I found this one I was able to just wipe it off and it worked well. And now I'm going to test this out. I'm measuring it so I can get my design as centered as possible. A lot of times I just eyeball it because that's just how I roll. I am using a 12-inch piece of transfer tape. Now I do have 24-inch, but I thought I would try this, and I'm so glad I did. I used this AT65 transfer tape, which worked great. I didn't have any issues with it. I should have only used it the first time and not on the second time that we'll see with the teal, but it still worked in the end. So I just overlapped those two 12-inch pieces, and then I burnished that down really, really well. And you can see that it's peeling back up really good. Biggest thing here is just take your time. By the end, I was sweating because, of course, I was on video, and I noticed my signs, of course, they're from Hobby Lobby. They were not built properly, so the way they put the hangers on the back of the first one that I cleaned off, it was the angle, the grain of the wood didn't go the right direction. That doesn't probably matter to most people, but if I had done the other sign, that's the first thing my husband would have pointed out, was that the grain of the wood was going the wrong direction. So I grabbed this one, measure the sign, and then I'm going to measure, and also with the AT65 transfer tape, I was able to use my pen on it so I could find that center point. And then I'm just going to line this up, try to get it as close as possible. I have to add in the second piece just to make sure that I'm not too close to either edge. And then I'm going to grab some painter's tape, and I can do this in a hinged method, so then I can work on one side only. And I actually wish, you'll see here, I didn't go down as far as I could to the painter's tape, and I wish I had gone farther, but I was getting to some of those edges that weren't quite coming up as easily, and so I thought it'd be easier to start on the other end. I would go all the way to the painter's tape if I had to do it over. So then I just cut the backing off, and I can carefully apply that down onto my sign. I tested it to make sure that the transfer tape would come off, and then I did the other side. By the time I was done with this, I was really sweating just because I didn't want to screw up at this point. It was a couple hours into the project, and this video is sped up a lot. So I took my time. That's the biggest thing. I took my time as I was doing it, and things always happen when you're on camera anyhow, and I know that, so I try to take even more time, but I wasn't really wanting to do this whole thing over. And then I can just carefully lay that down. It worked so slick. And then I am peeling the transfer tape away at a sharp angle. This helps it to release, and I ended up doing one side at a time just because 24 inches is a lot of width to try to work with. And then I put transfer tape on the other part, burnish that down. I did have some issues with my backing sticking to the vinyl, and that could be completely because I've had this vinyl for a while. So I just helped it along, and then I used some parchment paper. So with parchment paper, it doesn't stick, so I'm able to place that, get it where I want it to go, And then I used painter's tape to kind of hold that in place while I moved the parchment paper. And then I could just lay that back down and peel that off again at a sharp angle. Go slow, not as fast as me. And there's my finished project. I really like this new sign for my workspace. There are links in the description below to more information and where you can find this design. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day.